Hello, viewers. Welcome to the season 2 and episode 4 of SADF podcast. We delve into a compelling and timely topic today, which is faith and freedom, the battle for secularism in Bangladesh. Today, we have esteemed Professor Masum Billah, a distinguished professor at Jagannath University. Currently, he is a visiting fellow of Cote D Azure in Nice, France. Dr. Billah brings a wealth of knowledge and insight into the complex interplay between religion and secularism in Bangladesh. In this episode, we will explore the historical context, current challenges, and future prospects for secularism in Bangladesh. So, Dr. Billah, uh, welcome to SADA podcast. So, we will,
Thank you very much for getting me connected. As you have rightly mentioned that in my fellowship to Singapore National University as well as Cote d'Azur University here in Nice, I am looking at the constitutional position of religion in Bangladesh with a comparative perspective. I don't know whether I will be able to do justice to the topic, but thank you so very much for getting me connected to you.
thank you for introduction. So, I will start with the concept that since you have worked in Singapore, in France, so you know that what is secularism in the Western world, in the Asian world, and also in Bangladesh. So, do you see any difference in the definition of secularism in all these areas?
To be very frank, I'm still in doubt whether I know it because secularism is not a matter of knowing, it is a matter of understanding. So it is something to be understood than to be defined and described. Having a background of Bangladesh and South Asian political and cultural setting, I had this privilege to stay in Turkey, one of the very glaring cases of studying secularism as well as in the South Asian part of Singapore as well as now in Europe. But I have seen, yes, when you go through a society, you can feel it. It is a matter of sensing it. So, in our part of the globe, secularism is something very confounding, very misleading term. But when you can translate it into society, it is a matter to be enjoyed. When I was listening to this Kopil Sharma show some years back, he was making fun of it, right? In South Asia, you better know that there are a good pluralistic component of population, demography, Hindu, Muslim, Buddhist, Christian, and many more. But he was making fun of it. In Muslims Ramadan there is Ram, and in Hindus Diwali there is this Ali. So if you have these commonalities, Rama and Ali, you come to a very common understanding of this, common parlance of this society. That's what secularism is all about. That meaning that every people have their own faith, have their own belief, and have their equal status in the society. So a society will be thrived with tolerance and with mutual respect. If you look at the history and even if you look at the write-ups of Amartya Sen, you will see that secularism had been there since the days of Ashoka and since the days of Akbar. And even during the reign of Pakistan, the Bengali people also fought for a society where that religious will not be used for vindication of sordid political purposes. That what led us to incorporate the principle of secularism into our constitution. Having said so, I must say that secularism in our part of the globe was deeply embedded in our cultural ethos, in our cultural settings. For example, look at this word of Shah Abdul Karim, a mystic Baul songwriter, right? That গ্রামের নওজোয়ান হিন্দু মুসলমান মিলিয়া বাউলা গান আর মুর্শিদি গাইতাম. That's the history of secularism,
Yes, I
right?
mean, if I say it this way, that in our parts, like India, Bangladesh, secularism means that you get to practice your religion, right? So, whereas in the Europe, it's called completely different. Like the state is actually detaching itself from religion. Religion is a thing which you can practice behind the doors of your house, but you cannot publicly express anything. So, from that angle, That we know that the Constitution of Bangladesh in 1972 had this high ideal where secularism was one of them, along with democracy. But and you rightly said that due to the cultural heritage of Bangladesh, secularism is there, like Abdul Karim's son, and there are other, like in 1971 there are songs like Banglar Hindu, Banglar Muslim, Banglar Buddha, Banglar Christian, আমরা সবাই বাঙালি, that irrespective of our religion, we are all Bangali. So there is a nationalistic theme beyond the religion. That is what is Bangladesh was all about, and that's why high ideal was input there. But what is happening right now? That is the main focus. But before going into that, I would like to know that secularism was always debated in Bangladesh. What? Why? Why was it always debated?
Well, because look at the history of 24 years of Pakistan, that stately religion was sponsored. In 1956, the constitution we made for us, in that constitution, Islam had a priority over all other religion. And if you look at the birth of the state of Pakistan, religious was of the foremost consideration in dividing India into two states. One is Pakistan and another is India. So in the very birth itself was problematic. In 1956 constitution, Pakistan was declared to be the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, whereas it denied the cultural settings of the East Pakistan people, namely Bangladesh, the Bengalis. The cultural part, the Bengali ethnicity of being a Bengali was completely denied in the constitution. And in order to suppress the Bengali nationalistic movement, religion was used by the Pakistan military rulers. As such, widespread genocide was also launched in the name of religion, and the main victim of that genocide was the Hindu minority people in particular. So when Bangladesh became independent, the Constitution of Bangladesh categorically incorporated this principle that nobody is allowed to use religion for political purposes, and the state will not back a particular religion. That was clearly mentioned in Article 12 of the Constitution.
Right. So even after 1971, we see that when the father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, was killed along with his family members, we see again the first blow is upon this secularism, as if this is the divisive factor, and then it was removed. And then again, at first, Ziaur Rahman introduced uh, Islamization in constitution, and then Ershad just changed the character of the state, and we became a state where Islam has become the primary religion, and other religious persons has become a secondary, a citizen of the country. So, what was the reflection of this change during those periods? Like, was there any job-wise, discrimination-wise, or public life-wise, was there any suffering of the religious minorities of Bangladesh after 75 till the restoration of secularism in our constitution?
Look, this is once again a political game. The principal became the first victim because there is this sordid Hindu Muslim politics in the Indian subcontinental reality. First of all, secularism term was miscommunicated, and they effectively used this to mislead the people. Well, this is something which is imported from India, which is actually is the reverse. Bangladesh incorporated secularism into the constitution well ahead of India. That was one miscommunication that became the casualty soon after the assassination of the father of the nation. Number two, the Bengali term of secularism became dharmonirapekshata or dharmonirapekkhata, the neutrality among the religions. The very Article 12 defining the content of secularism was removed. That put the military oligarchy in an easier position to mislead the people and to use religion as a ploy to perpetuate their power. So they targeted the principle of secularism at first, and instead they inserted Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, and then further heightened that principle through the hand of Ershad. Islam became the state religion, where people did not by no any means become more religious than before. Only the constitution polity became Islamized. Now, what was the impact? It is very difficult to establish a direct linkage with the change of the polity and with the real scenario, but one can easily argue when a state particularly gives status of a particular religion a state religion, right, the social harmony becomes at stake. Number one, look at the 1990 post Ayodhya incident happening in Bangladesh. All the Hindu temples were targeted. We can recall from the memories of our boyhood. So the experience is not good. The 50 years history of our transition, of our antecedents of secularism is full of ambivalence. Uh, in 2001, soon after the election of October, when the four-party alliance came into power, you can discover a systematic oppression to the minority Hindu communities was launched all over the country. And unfortunately, that has not been taken to account. Then in 2009, when Awami League again came to power, they restored the original principle of secularism, vowed to establish a society originally contemplated by our liberation war. But this time, actually, the political reformers were not in a position to change the whole Islamized expressions of the constitution. So what did they do? They refashioned the secularism clause. This time, secularism was restored, but what was unique to this version of 15th Amendment, as we popularly call,
When was the time that the
it was
15th?
2011 actually, through the 15th Amendment, all other religions' name was clearly mentioned in the Constitution. It was said in Article 2A that Islam is the state religion. However, professors of other religion, Hindu, Muslims, Buddhist, Christian, they will have equal status and right from the state. So side by side, the principle of state religion and the principle of secularism, ran together. So now it can be debated to what extent this idea of asymmetric secularism can work. I will say that it is a developed version in comparison to 19th state religion, sole state religion version. But as I have said, that secularism is not a matter to be achieved overnight. It is a matter to be cultured. It is a matter to be nourished. It is a matter to be cherished. So if we term the last 15 years as a twilight of secularism, we can term the present time in the post-August scenario, post-protest scenario, we can term it as a dark chapter of secularism. So with the increased trend of religious extremism in Bangladesh, I see that the future of secularism is cast with darkness.
For the audience, I will just to share that what happens when you delete secularism from the constitution. At first, when you introduce Islam as a state religion during the Pakistan time, in 1947, there were 33% of Hindus in Bangladesh. I'm just particularly talking about a particular religion. That this 33% reduced into somewhat 21% in 1971. This is because of the state-sponsored discrimination inflicted upon the Hindu minorities in Pakistan. And then in 1971, when we have Bangladesh, for a moment, there was recognition of religious and ethnic minorities in Bangladesh. But after 1975, again, the state-sponsored discrimination was introduced by way of vesting properties. I mean, declaring Hindus as state enemies and then taking up their properties, not appointing them into the government jobs in military and other uh, like Navy and Air Force, there were Hindus were not appointed, or even Buddhists or Christians were not appointed in those posts. And then uh, after 2009, the scenario changed a little bit. A lot of them were involved in government jobs, in teaching, and then obviously the land, the big question of this land was restored through legal process of revision, repealing that Enemy Property Act. So the audience can feel that actually through when what happens in Bangladesh when secularism is there in the constitution, and what happens when secularism is not there in the constitution. And uh, I would like to say on 5th of August, when the Hasina government fell, just after that, again, Hindu, Buddhists, and Christians, they were the target. Ahmadiyas were the targets, and their place of worships were attacked. They were removed from services. Even they were doing private jobs in private schools as a teacher, they were removed from those jobs. So again, religious and ethnic minorities' life and liberty are at stake. So what do you think is going to happen? Because the Constitution Reform Committee has proposed to remove secularism and to introduce, a pluralism. Do you think that pluralism will ensure human rights for the religious and ethnic minorities of Bangladesh?
Well, this is a very good cake for the researchers and academics. But in a politically volatile society, mere principle will not work unless the people are taught to respect the principle of tolerism, the principle tolerance, the principle of secularism, and the real meaning is well perceived. Let me again, reiterate that in Bangladesh or in Greater South Asia, secularism is a very, very contested term. But for me, it is a sense, it is a mantra, it is a process, it is anything than religion itself. So people in Bangladesh has been taught that, well, this is putting challenge to the religious principle, which is not true. So thing is, when you introduce this principle of pluralism in lieu of secularism, and again, putting the state religion clause intact, the neutrality of the state will be at jeopardy, the balance will be lost. So the society will be leaning forward to the extreme religious principle once again. Now, what has been the impact, particularly in the post 5th August scenario? Look at this. The society has been very, very reactionary, number one. Number two, the society is becoming more dehumanized. Look at the state of the women rights movement. There is in the center of the Dhaka University Raju Bhaskarya Chattor, a woman effigy was there, and it is being beaten by the religious clerics, arguing that they are anti-Islamic, their progress is anti-Islamic, their way of not wearing veil is anti-Islamic. This is something which is unacceptable if you want to really build a peaceful society. Now we can recall the Themis removal movement from the premise of the High Court campus. That was also alarming, right? But when you have a very good leader who can somehow make them understand that no, this was not something anti-Islamic, then you can come to a compromise. But at the end of the day, it does not work. So that has becoming in a many more meaningful ways, and hatred is being spreaded all over the society. And to that respect, that the content of the textbook is getting altered. So so you see that secularism is something which cannot be ensured merely by incorporating principle, but it is a matter to be practiced, it is a matter to be taught to the people, that it is not actually, it has nothing to challenge the religious principles, rather it is a mantra which can be practiced to keep the balance of the society.
Which popped into my mind is a debate like whether Hasina promoting madrasa education, promoting model mosques, have fueled actually this situation? People are asking this question. Would you like to comment on this?
Well, that is a very sweeping generalization. If you want to modernize the religious school madrasas, you need to make them attached with the mainstream society. So, according recognition to the non-conventional madrasa education was a very modern step, so that they become more technologically educated and they can more feel the development of the society. But if you are not cooperated from the religion, from the political parties, hardly you can ensure the teachings of secularism. I want to mention that the recommendations of the Women Rights Reform Commission, for example, according equal status, equal right to property to the woman, was there back in 97 when Sheikh Hasina was in power. She wanted to do that, but she was opposed by the religious groups, but no political party did cooperate her. Even in 2011, she again wanted to accord recognition to the property, equal recognition to the of property to the woman. She did not get cooperation from the political parties, even unfortunately from the progressive women organizations. Now, on a more turmoiling society, you are again recommending it. Now you are looking the so modernizing them or according recognition them itself had not made them more violent. It is some other multifaceted phenomenon that has made Bangladeshi society uh, more prone to religious extremism.
So again, getting back to education, which you say that the textbooks are getting altered, but what do you think that need to be introduced in our education system, which will actually ensure a secular generation all over madrasa? I mean, madrasa, there are two kinds of madrasas, English speaking students, Bangla speaking students. So how actually do you want to bring a change for secularism?
Probably we have emphasized too much on the textbook thing. If you look at the output, merely change in the content of the text does not change the society. What I feel needed in Bangladesh is a kind of resurgence of cultural renaissance. Cultural movement in Bangladesh has been at stake for the last few years. Can you recall the Jatra Palas of the rural Bengal? Even the religious ceremonies and the Meblanas used to give this sermon containing the principle of tolerance, and the whole content was respecting each other's religions. But now, with the resurgence of YouTube Maulanas, the content of religious sermon has changed. They call for jihads and they call for other extreme activities, doing a Islamic revolution overnight, changing everything, demolishing the sculptures and giving fatwa or offering this religious opinion that this thing is banned, that thing is banned, that is not acceptable, everything. So they have become more popular. So in order to counter all those, a kind of cultural renaissance need to be done. Probably uh, uh, the political parties, the cultural organizations, they need to be united again to bring back all those cultural ethos of the society. Otherwise, this is going to be a serious position for Bangladesh in the days to come. Even I apprehend that in future there are much more devastating thing we may have to observe.
What I'm seeing is that secularism and extremism are fighting in Bangladesh. This is not only like Awami League versus this NCP or Yunus or anything else. It's actually secularism versus religious extremism. So that was the thing in 1971 as well, secularism and religious extremism. And the same thing has came back. And we are seeing that right now in Bangladesh, populist political leaders are there in, I mean, there are no right wing and left wing right now. There are populist leaders who are just selling whatever people is buying, you know. So people, as you said, these YouTube Maulanas, they are buying it from them. They are buying it from madrasas. They are buying it from, all the mosques that has been built in last 15, 16 years. So what is your prediction for, like you predicted a little bit, but what is your real prediction for Bangladesh in the upcoming, like next 5, 6 years? Do you see that this extremism is going to rise and boil the geopolitical situation of that area to a point of no return? Or do you see that at certain point it will escalate down and people may remain with secularism? And how do you see that?
I will not be surprised if there is a Islamic revolution in the days to come, because the way the Hafazat Islam and other rightist political forces are being backed by the political parties. Look at the political parties. When political parties become that much reliant on religious principles, hardly you can expect to have something for the nation. The newly formed political party, they are using the religion, the Hafazat Islam or any other political, even
NC.
NCP or even Bangladesh Nationalist Party. They are not clearly saying about their stand regarding this. This is a very unique phenomenon in Bangladesh, that the leftist, rightist, far leftist and far rightist, they are in unison, uh, 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 and regarding this, and they have become silent about this new phenomenon. Only the main really political ways that was open for Bangladesh, an ideal Bangladesh can be made by way of following a middle path of respecting all religion as well as respecting the ethos of 1971 is at stake now. So for the time being, Bangladesh is struggling to see the right path when the ideals and principles it was built on in 1971, at the time, that is at stake. So I can predict that I will not be surprised actually if there is in new future there is this quote and unquote romantic revolution gets much more Islamized and Bangladesh loses its path, its right path.
When you're saying that this romanticized revolution can become unromantic, become crude reality,
Hmm.
I mean, before leaving today's podcast, I want to say that this situation has made the religious and ethnic minorities of Bangladesh more vulnerable. They were vulnerable before, but they are more vulnerable now. And they are not politically empowered, number one, because there is no state institution like India and Nepal, for example, Minority Rights Commission,
Mhm.
Ministry of Minority Affairs. These things are not there. Even there is no specific law for the protection of religious and ethnic minorities. There is no, you remember, there is one anti-discrimination law was in pipeline
Mhm.
when Professor Shah Alam was heading the law commission. And at the same time, Dr. Mizanur Rahman was the chair in the Human Rights Commission. But unfortunately, it never saw the light of the day. So people, minority activists, are now saying that there has to be a minority rights commission, there has to be a ministry for minority affairs, there has to be laws regarding like anti-discrimination law and protection of religious minorities law. They have made these 7 points. Do you think that if these seven demands are fulfilled by the next elected government, do you think that the dream of secularism will be fulfilled, even though the secularism very word might not be in the constitution?
Even if you look that the minority discourse itself is not well studied in Bangladesh, what the political parties say that, well, there is no minority in Bangladesh. We treat everybody equally. We don't say somebody Shankha Loghu or Shankha Guru.
Even, I mean, even it is like whenever there is an attack on them, it is totally denied by political parties. I mean, we thought Yunus would be different, but he is not. He is, I mean, he is rather more dangerous because he is a Nobel laureate and he is a champion of NGO world all over the world. So when he says no, the people buys it without questioning the quality of the remarks. You see. So please go on what you were saying.
Right. When political leaders themselves term that we don't distinguish Shankha Loghu, Shankha Guru, problem lies there. Because in a state full of different kind of religious people or different orientation and dimension and diverse cultural diversity, the Adivashis and many more, right? When they say that we don't distinguish between them, the problem starts there. So there is a tendency of denying the existence of the minority themselves. So it is not unusual when the draconian laws like the vested property laws or any other laws is made. So there is no clear commitment on the part of the political parties that, well, if voted to power, we will repeal all these draconian discriminatory laws on of the avowed commitment of this immediate past student protest led revolution, right? Actually, it is not well promised that the minorities in Bangladesh are persecuted. So unless and until this culture of denial is discouraged, there is no future of minority rights in Bangladesh. It will continue to be at stake. Even in the post protest scenario, you will see that the minorities have suffered the most casualty because they are presumed to be the supporter of Awami League, and as such, their business entrepreneurs and their business households have been attacked by the mobs and by other miscreants. So, what I am arguing is that secularism by itself cannot ensure everything, but what can it can do that if it is there, the state has an obligation to act as a referee. It is a safety valve so that no political dominant group can use the religious identity to suppress and oppress other identities. Bangladesh is a product of the efforts from all kind of people, irrespective of their religion. As such, we want a Bangladesh where pluralism, of course, should be there, but the principle of secularism will be maintained so that every group, every people can profess their religion as well as can learn to become more tolerant to other views so that they can coexist in the society in a peaceful manner.
Thank you, Dr. Billah. So I will just summarize in one line because I want the viewers to remember your final words is that coexistence, tolerance equals to secularism. Whereas, I mean, Bangladesh, if we remove it, it is going to trouble the religious and ethnic minorities of Bangladesh. And in the near future, it, religious extremism will be at high. So I hope that the political parties and the main actors will come to their senses and will not remove this safety valve, the secularism, and secularism will remain untouched in the constitution of Bangladesh. So thank you. See you in the next podcast. And thank you once again, Dr. Masum Billah.
Thank you very much.